Hello, this is Alec Frazier of the Autistic Reality podcast, and holy loving crap, I am here with...
Oh, me? Joe Quesada, how are you?
Hey, Joe is very humble. He's the creative head of all Marvel, so I just want to clarify that for people. What all are you in charge of?
I'm as Chief Creative Officer, I'm in charge of making sure that the Marvel DNA goes through, is true through all all our products, whether it's comic books, TV, animation, and our video games. The only thing I'm no longer involved with is the stuff on the studio side, movie side.
Okay, that's good to know. So you actually have a long-standing connection with Daredevil. What draws you to that hero?
I just always loved the Shakespearean aspect of that hero. It's always between Daredevil and Spider-Man for me. But Daredevil, there's something about Matt Murdock, and there's something about the contradictions when you juxtapose them to one another. You have a man who practices law by day and then practices vigilante justice by night. You have a guy who's a devout Christian, and then but goes out and wears a suit that's indicative of the devil to fight crime. Those are just like juicy aspects of the character that make him, a character that I love to read and love to write and love to draw.
So you are a rarity. You both write and draw stories, and you've done some amazing work like that. What's it like to be a rare person who does both?
Well, I don't know if I'm a rarity per se. I like to do both. I hope I do both well. It's just, and by the way, I also like working on stories that other people write. But every once in a while, I have a story that I want to do myself, or sometimes I'll write a story that I feel another artist is appropriate for. It's just, I love to tell stories. That's really what it is, whether it's drawing it, writing it, filming it, whatever it may be.
So you both wrote and drew this wonderful story, Daredevil Father, and I asked you about it. One second.
Hold on.
We're about to go live, so not upstairs now.
So you both wrote and drew Daredevil Father, and I asked you about that in 2016 at a panel, and you told me a rather personal story. Would you feel comfortable sharing that?
Sure. I mean, I wrote Daredevil Father. I had gone down to Florida. My father was ill and in the hospital, but recovering. So I was there for 7 days. And 7 days, during the daytime, I was there at his bedside, and he was fine. He was lucid. He was talking, and I just sat there and wrote the entire thing in those all the issues. And then one of the decisions that my dad had finally made, or I was able to convince him to make, was to move out of Florida and move back to New York with me. So he finally said, "Okay, let's do it." And once he said that, I said, "Great. I'm going to get on a plane today. I'm going to go back to New York. I'll be back in 24 hours. I got to get some stuff settled, and then I'm going to come back, and we're going to put the house on the market, and blah, blah, blah." And he was happy with that. And then I left. I landed in New York, and then that evening I got a call from the hospital that he had passed away. And all the stuff that comes with that, of course, but the one bit of happiness is that he was the person who inspired me to be an artist. He was the guy. He bought me my first comic book. He wanted me to be in the creative world. So, and there was nothing that he liked more than sort of sitting over my shoulder while I was creating stuff, whether it was drawing or writing. So he got 7 days, and we were there, and I was just writing my story and talking to him, and shooting shit about baseball and everything else. So we had to spend that time together, and at the end, the story was called Father from the very beginning, and it's a story about the effects and the legacies that our fathers leave behind, both negative and positive. I was lucky to have a very positive role model in my life. Some of the characters in the story, not so much.
You mentioned that last panel of the story, and I'm going to be incredibly honest. I noticed you were moved to tears as you mentioned that panel, and so the last panel is
it's Matt being hugged by his father, and before drawing that, I used photo reference for that, and it was me hugging my daughter. So we took that photo together. She was, I guess, 3 or 4 at the time. She's walking around the convention now. She's 18, and again, it was. I needed her in that book, right? So I mean, I drew her and then changed her gender to a little boy, but that's her, and that's me in that final moment. And again, the tip of the hat to my dad. He was also a great grandfather.
Yeah, I like.
They're out of time. They're out of time because he has to go on live. So one more question.
Well, then it's only okay. One last question is, Daredevil is a disabled character. People look for disabled heroes. There are disabled people in the arts who want to get in there, whether it's drawing or acting or anything. We are historically underrepresented in all fields of employment, but especially creative employment. I think I know your answer, but should we be employed in creative endeavors, and how can we facilitate that?
I think it's always about the work. It's always about the work and getting it in front of people, right? Regardless of what your disability is, regardless of what your gender, your sex, your sexual preference. The thing I love about comic books is that when someone sends in their work, sometimes you can tell who they are, where they are from their last name, right? Or from the first. But it doesn't matter to us. Is it a good story? Does it look great, right? If you hit the marks on all those things, and it's at the Marvel watermark, then
it shouldn't matter.
It shouldn't matter.
Yeah.
And it doesn't. And by the way, it doesn't matter. And I think, and that's why I also appreciate you and the work that you've been doing. You've been putting in the hard work, and even and it's sometimes even putting in the hard work is also just having the gumption to say, I'm going to messenger out the Chief Creative Officer Marvel and see if he'll have an interview with me, right?
Yeah.
And you were from the very time we first met in
2016. Bendis wasn't responding to my tweets, so I said I'll go to his boss.
So we'd be in Toronto or Austin?
Toronto.
Dallas. Toronto. That's right. And you came right up and we started talking, and we've known each other ever since.
Having the cojones to do that is...
Sometimes it's what you got to do. I once tweeted out, I know we're out of time, but I don't care. I once tweeted out, true talent does not go undiscovered, right? And that was, people perceived that very controversially. I'm like, there's nothing controversial about it. But what about the kid that can't, that isn't privileged enough to afford X, Y, and Z? Like, if you could draw, pencil and paper is all you need. If you could write, pencil and paper is all you need. Well, what about Van Gogh? Well, Van Gogh was discovered. He died before it happened, but somebody walked in and said, holy mackerel, look at all these great paintings, right? You hope that's not your legacy.
That was his brother, actually.
Yeah, but he was discovered. So to me, it doesn't matter what part of the world you're from, right? If you have access to if you have access to your talent, right, and you can put it down, and even if you don't have paper, listen, there's some. I see people spray paint on walls, right? People that are that talented will not be denied. They'll get it out there somewhere, somehow. But the world is littered, and I hate to say it, the world is littered with a lot of woulda, shoulda, coulda, right?
Yeah.
And by the way, success is not necessarily monetary either, right?
Yeah.
It's different for everyone else. It's very, very different. For someone, success is just being happy, having a great family. Whatever your so to me, true talent does not go undiscovered. And I think if people keep that in mind and understand, it's when I heard the saying, at first I didn't make it up. At first I sort of shuddered at it, like, whoa, and the more I thought about it, the more I realized there's a certain truism to it, So in your case, I know you're a writer, you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And you're plugging away, and It doesn't happen overnight. And the thing to always remember, it might have been, I don't know if I'm attributing the quote to somebody, the wrong person. I always heard it was a quote from Sting the musician, who said, talking about rock bands, talking about one-hit wonders. Your years at the top are definitely an actual correlation of how many years you spent at the bottom struggling to make it.
And that is certainly a correlation to the disability cause.
Yep.
Joe, thank you very much.
Thanks.
Hi everyone, it's Alec Frazier, and I am back from New York Comic Con, and I have a small addendum to the Joe Quesada interview. He was very, very busy, and I had a bit briefer than I thought with him. Still, I'm very grateful to the fact that he was able to take time off from when he was supposed to be working, the man in charge of Marvel, taking time off when he was supposed to be working to sit or stand with my interview. You may have heard that the next week after the interview, he left his position as creative chief of Marvel, and that was given to Kevin Feige, although Joe Quesada remains in very high executive places there. We at Autistic Reality and Without Fear, the first autistic superhero, and Veni Vidi Autism are happy that things are progressing, that movies are now under the same house as the rest of the company creatively. We do wish for a cohesive, successful launch of all of those products together. And as an added bonus, because the Quesada interview was brief, I wanted to take you on a small tour of my Without Fear wall. So Without Fear was the first book that I came out with. It was a booklet, really, on the first autistic superhero. And this is a signed copy of the first edition of that booklet. It was small, like 15 pages or so. I later came out with the second edition. That's that there. I had art made. I had front cover art by Darius Johnson. That's this right here. And right here. I had inside front cover art made by Aaron O'Brien. That's here. By the way, go to my book's Facebook page for bigger images of the art and for a photo gallery of this wall. And then this here is the back cover. I also have a billy club, which I would use sometimes for cosplays as the character. I have a piece of fan art of the character made by the world-famous artist Chris Art. Much better view on my Facebook page. I have an issue of the actual comic where Tim Urick is revealed as the first ever properly rendered autistic superhero. I also have an action figure of Daredevil from the TV show, and an action figure of Daredevil signed by Joe Quesada from the art he did on the Guardian Devil storyline. I believe Kevin Smith wrote that. I also have art of Tim Urick made by my friend and mentee Liz Pritchard. That's here. And I have an original panel, a panel of original art for the back cover here by Jeff Perdziak. He did the back cover. And then the really valuable stuff. Here I have a photo of me and Stan Lee. I met him. I said, "Sir, you mean the world to me?" He said, "I'd better." And then when I was going to that's when I got my signature from him. I'll more on that in a moment. And when I went to get my photo with him, the receipt machine broke. He went to the bathroom, came back, spread his arms wide, and said, "Let the wonderment commence." That character he played on all the DVD features, that was the real guy. Or it had been a character he'd played for like 75 years. That is me with Charlie Cox, who plays Daredevil. When I told him what I do disability advocacy wise, he said that I do God's work, and that meant a lot to me, because clearly it means a lot to him. This is my most valuable possession. This is a painting of Daredevil by Tyler Anthony Roble of Under the Hood Artists in Buffalo, New York. Oil painting of Daredevil as rendered in the opening credits to the TV show. It has 3 autographs. This is Charlie Cox. This is Joe Quesada. This is Joe Quesada. This is Alex Malev, who drew it for at least 10 years, writing with Brian Michael Bendis did the writing, and he co-invented the character of Tim Urich. And this is the autograph of Stan Lee. Like I said, my most valuable possession, and I am never, ever, ever getting rid of that. So that was a tour of my Without Fear wall, which was meant to supplement the Quesada interview. I thank you very much for being my guests on this podcast, this video cast, and I wish you peace and life and long luck.